Stay back! What do you want from me?
Come to us!
I'm not like you.
The sound of my wife's car door slamming at 2:47 a.m. shouldn't have woken me. Rachel always said her yoga retreats required early departures. But yoga retreats don't involve leather masks, and they definitely don't happen in my mother's handwriting. I found the note 3 hours earlier, tucked behind Rachel's mirror like a dirty secret. Next gathering, October 15th, cabin masks confirmed, mother arranging RSVP. My mother, Nina Darrow, the woman who raised me to believe trust was sacred. Now I'm crouched behind a Douglas fir, watching shadows dance behind frosted cabin windows. The GPS tracker I built years ago for lost hikers led me here, to this forgotten corner of Fern Ridge's endless forests. What I'm seeing through those windows will change everything. Rachel's silhouette moves against the glass, then my sister Tess, her laugh cutting through the October air like broken glass. And there's Nina, orchestrating something I can't yet comprehend. A man in a horned leather mask enters the frame. The screaming starts. The first thing you learn as an audio technician is that every room has secrets. Walls remember conversations. Floors hold footsteps. Even silence tells stories. Our house on Maple Street had been whispering for months, but I was too deaf to listen. Rachel started staying late at the yoga studio in August. New meditation program, she'd say, kissing my forehead with lips that tasted like lies. You know how these wealthy Fern Ridge ladies need their spiritual guidance? I believed her because believing was easier than questioning 20 years of marriage. My sister Tess visited more often, always bringing wine and sympathy. You look tired, Ethan. Maybe you should take a vacation. Clear your head. Even Nina, my therapist mother, started dropping hints about taking breaks and finding yourself. The woman who'd spent my childhood teaching me to solve problems was suddenly suggesting I run from them. But audio technicians don't run. We listen. We record. We find the truth hidden in frequencies others can't hear. The note changed everything. I'd been organizing Rachel's closet when her jewelry box fell, spilling earrings across hardwood. Behind the velvet lining, folded like a prayer, was the handwritten message in Nina's precise script. October 15th. Tonight. I should have confronted Rachel. A normal husband would have demanded explanations, made accusations, fought for clarity. Instead, I did what technicians do. I gathered data. The GPS tracker took 15 minutes to install under Rachel's Honda, military grade, built from components I'd collected over years of side projects. She'd never noticed the magnetic housing tucked behind her rear wheel well. At 2:30 a.m., her phone pinged a text. Ready? She kissed my sleeping forehead and whispered, "Be back tomorrow, love." The Honda's taillights disappeared into Fern Ridge's fog-drunk streets. My laptop showed her route, past downtown, beyond the tourist cabins, deep into territory where cell towers gave up and civilization became suggestion. 20 minutes later, I was hiking through underbrush with my emergency pack and night vision scope. The tracker led me uphill, through old-growth Douglas firs that creaked like dying giants. My breath formed clouds in the thin mountain air. The cabin materialized from darkness like a bad dream. Windows glowed amber against black trees. 3 cars parked outside, Rachel's Honda, Nina's Subaru, and a black sedan I didn't recognize. Through my scope, I watched shadows move behind frosted glass, multiple figures, movement that seemed choreographed, ritualistic. Then Rachel appeared in profile, unmistakable even through dirty windows. She was laughing, head thrown back in genuine joy, the kind of joy she hadn't shown me in months. Tess joined her, equally animated. They embraced like conspirators, sharing victory. Nina entered the frame, and my blood turned to ice water. My mother, the woman who'd taught me honesty and integrity, was orchestrating whatever this was. Her movements were commanding, authoritative. She pointed at something outside my view, and both Rachel and Tess nodded obediently. The man in the horned mask appeared like something from medieval nightmare. Leather stretched across features I couldn't identify, with carved horns jutting from his forehead. He carried a whip in one hand and what looked like a camera in the other. The screaming that followed wasn't pain. It was ecstasy. I pressed closer to the window, pulse hammering in my ears. Inside, figures moved in patterns that suggested ceremony, submission, performance. The masked man raised his whip, and someone moaned approval. Camera flashes strobed like lightning. My wife, my sister, my mother, all participating in something that belonged in the darkest corners of the internet. Branches cracked behind me. Well, little Ethan finally found his way to the party. Hands grabbed my arms before I could turn. Two men in dark clothing hauled me backward, away from revelation and toward consequences I hadn't considered. Quiet now, one whispered. Don't make this harder than necessary. They dragged me to a black van parked 50 yards from the cabin. The side door slid open, revealing a third figure waiting in darkness. Bring him here. They shoved me inside, and the door slammed shut. Battery-powered LED strips provided dim illumination. Sitting across from me was a young woman, maybe 25, wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, pretty, with dark hair and intelligent eyes that studied me like a specimen. You don't know what you're seeing, she said calmly. But you will. Who are you? She reached up and pulled off what I'd thought was a knit cap. It wasn't. It was a mask, perfectly crafted to look like normal clothing. Underneath was a face I recognized, but had never really seen. Hannah Vance, Nina's former patient. The girl who disappeared from therapy 6 months ago after her parents died in a car accident. Your mother saved my life, Hannah said. After the accident, I had nothing. No family, no money, no future. Nina offered me something better than survival. She offered me purpose. What kind of purpose involves leather masks and whips? Hannah smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. The kind that pays for your house, your wife's yoga studio, your comfortable little life in comfortable little Fern Ridge? You think Nina's therapy practice supports all that? My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Elite clients, Ethan. Very elite. People who pay enormous amounts for specialized experiences. Discretion costs extra. The van's engine started. We were moving, leaving the cabin and its horrors behind. Where are you taking me? Home. Where you're going to forget everything you saw tonight. You're going to wake up tomorrow and continue being Nina's quiet, obedient son, Rachel's trusting husband, Tess's protective brother. And if I don't, Hannah's expression hardened, then you'll discover how little your family actually values your comfort. The van stopped at the end of my street. The side door opened, revealing fog-shrouded pavement and the distant glow of my porch light. Walk away, Ethan, Hannah said. This is your only warning. I stumbled out onto cold asphalt. The van disappeared before I could memorize the license plate. My feet were numb by the time I reached my front door. Rachel's Honda sat in the driveway like nothing had happened. Inside, our house felt like a stranger's home. Every photograph, every piece of furniture, every shared memory now carried the weight of deception. I climbed into bed beside my sleeping wife and stared at the ceiling until dawn. Rachel came home at 7 a.m. with coffee and bagels, playing the role of dutiful wife returning from spiritual retreat. She kissed my cheek and asked about my evening. Quiet, I said. Worked on some audio projects. That's nice, honey. You should pursue more hobbies. The word hobbies hit me like a slap, as if 20 years of building surveillance equipment, recording devices, and communication systems were just ways to pass time. As if my technical skills were amusing quirks instead of professional expertise. But audio technicians learn patience. We wait for the right frequency, the perfect moment, the clearest signal. I waited until Rachel left for the yoga studio, then retrieved her tablet from the bedroom dresser. She'd always been casual about passwords, using our anniversary date for everything. The screen unlocked on the first try. Her email revealed months of encrypted communications with addresses I didn't recognize. The subject lines were innocuous: schedule update, payment processed, new member orientation. But the patterns suggested coordinated activity. One thread caught my attention. Messages between Rachel and someone named Leo Boss 47. Leo, my best friend since college. Leo Stratton, who'd been my best man, who'd helped me move into this house, who'd listened to me complain about Rachel's distance without mentioning he might be the cause. The most recent message was time-stamped 3:17 a.m. Leo Boss, 47. Amazing tonight. She's getting better at the role play. Yoga Ratch 23. Practice makes perfect. Think he suspected anything? Leo Boss 47. Ethan? Guy's oblivious, just like Nina said. Keep smiling and he'll stay dumb. My hands shook as I scrolled through weeks of similar exchanges. Details about sessions, payments, discussions of my emotional state and how to manipulate it, references to video recordings and client requests. Rachel wasn't just cheating. She was performing. For money. With my best friend. Under my mother's management. The bathroom door slammed as I vomited everything I'd eaten in the past 24 hours. When the retching stopped, I called in sick to work and drove to Radio Shack. By noon, I had components for a complete surveillance system. Micro cameras, audio recorders, wireless transmitters, motion sensors, equipment small enough to hide anywhere. My basement workshop became mission control. I'd built it years ago for audio projects, but now it would serve a different purpose. 27 monitors displayed feeds from cameras I installed throughout our house, Leo's apartment, and Nina's office. Every conversation, every movement, every secret would be recorded and cataloged. The first day yielded nothing interesting. Rachel taught yoga classes. Leo worked his construction job. Nina saw therapy patients. Normal lives hiding abnormal truths. Day 2 brought results. Leo visited our house while I was supposedly at work. I watched from my car as he used the spare key Rachel had given him. On the bedroom camera, I witnessed betrayal in high definition. My wife and best friend ducking on sheets I'd washed that morning. Afterward, they discussed logistics. Next week's gathering would be larger. New clients were flying in from Seattle and Portland. Nina had arranged special accommodations at the radio tower location. Ethan's been asking questions, Rachel said, lighting a cigarette she'd never smoked in front of me. About what? My schedule, where I go. He found something in my jewelry box. Leo sat up, suddenly alert. What kind of something? I don't know, but Nina says we need to be more careful. Maybe bring him into the fold. You think he'd go for it? Rachel laughed, harsh and bitter. Ethan? He can't even ask for a promotion at work. You think he'd handle watching his wife get railed by strangers for money? They were right. The old Ethan wouldn't handle it. The old Ethan would crumble, seek therapy, probably end up as one of Nina's patients, while she profited from his emotional destruction. But the old Ethan hadn't known he was living in a house of lies. That evening, Leo came over for our weekly poker game. We sat at the kitchen table where he'd ducked my wife 6 hours earlier, playing cards and drinking beer like civilized men. You seem stressed lately, he said, dealing 5-card stud. Everything okay with Rachel? She's been distant, working late. Marriage is hard work, brother. Sometimes you gotta fight for what you want. The word brother made my teeth ache. This man who'd shared my secrets, celebrated my successes, comforted me through failures. This man was actively working to destroy my life while pretending concern for my well-being. Thanks for always having my back, I said, meeting his eyes across the table. Leo grinned, easy and confident. Always, brother. That's what friends do. That night, I installed a camera inside Leo's bathroom mirror. The next morning, I watched him practice pickup lines for whatever woman he'd seduce next. Probably someone's wife, probably someone's best friend's wife. The basement monitors became my new television. I watched Rachel teach yoga poses she'd learned in forest cabins. I watched Nina manipulate therapy patients with techniques designed to create dependency rather than healing. I watched Leo charm other women the same way he'd charmed me into 20 years of friendship. But watching wasn't enough anymore. Audio technicians don't just record sound, we manipulate it. We create feedback loops that destroy speakers. We generate frequencies that shatter glass. Time to create some feedback of my own. The October 22nd gathering was scheduled for the abandoned radio tower on Fern Ridge's North Ridge. According to Intercepted Communications, it would be their largest event yet. 12 clients paying $5,000 each for premium experiences. $60,000. More than I made in a year. I spent 3 days preparing, using vacation time to scout the location and plant equipment. The radio tower had been built in the 1960s for emergency broadcasting, then abandoned when cellular networks made it obsolete. Now it served as a monument to forgotten technology, and apparently as a venue for my family's secret business. The tower itself rose 200 feet into mountain sky, surrounded by concrete buildings that had once housed transmission equipment. Perfect acoustics for someone who understood sound manipulation. I arrived before dawn, carrying equipment in a hiking pack. Security cameras went first, 24 units placed strategically around the perimeter and inside buildings. Night vision, motion detection, wireless transmission to servers I'd established in an abandoned maintenance shed. Audio surveillance came next. Directional microphones, recording devices, amplification systems that could capture whispers from 50 yards away. The real innovation was the sonic weapons system. Most people don't understand sound's destructive potential. Certain frequencies can cause nausea, disorientation, temporary deafness. Others can shatter windows, disrupt electronic equipment, or create psychological terror through subsonic vibrations. I installed speakers throughout the facility, connected to control systems that would let me orchestrate chaos from a safe distance. Each speaker was designed to produce specific frequencies, some for physical discomfort, others for equipment destruction, and a few for pure psychological warfare. The maintenance tunnel system was my masterstroke. Built during the Cold War as fallout shelter access, these underground passages connected every building to an exit point half a mile away. I could move unseen, strike from anywhere, disappear without trace. By sunset, the trap was set. I positioned myself in the old control room, surrounded by monitors and audio equipment that would make NASA jealous. Through security cameras, I watched expensive cars arrive. Mercedes, BMWs, one Ferrari that probably cost more than my house. The clients were exactly what I'd expected. Middle-aged men with soft bodies and hard eyes, wealthy enough to buy anything, bored enough to pay premium prices for degradation. They wore casual clothes but carried themselves like corporate executives attending a board meeting. Rachel arrived with Nina and Tess, all three dressed in black clothing that suggested ceremony rather than celebration. My wife had never looked more beautiful or more alien. Leo came last, driving his pickup truck like he belonged among luxury vehicles. He carried a large duffel bag that probably contained masks, props, and whatever tools were needed for the evening's entertainment. Inside the main building, they transformed space into something between theater and dungeon. Black sheets covered windows, candles provided flickering illumination, cameras were positioned to capture every angle of whatever would unfold. Nina took charge, directing placement of furniture, testing equipment, instructing participants on protocols I couldn't hear but could imagine. She moved with the authority of someone completely comfortable orchestrating other people's degradation. The clients gathered in a semicircle, drinks in hand, casual conversation masking anticipated violence. They looked like any group of successful men at a cocktail party, if cocktail parties involved paying for the privilege of humiliating women. Rachel, Tess, and two other women I didn't recognize disappeared into a side room. When they emerged, they wore leather masks that covered their faces but left their bodies exposed. Each mask was unique. Rachel's bore intricate Celtic knots, Tess's featured silver studs. The others were decorated with symbols I couldn't identify. The transformation was complete. My wife and sister had become products for consumption. Leo put on the horned mask I'd seen at the cabin. Underneath, he was still recognizably himself, but the leather gave him authority that commanded the room. He raised his hand, and conversation stopped. "Gentlemen," he said, voice carrying through the space like a ringmaster's call, "welcome to an evening of authentic experience." That's when I activated the first frequency, 18 hertz, subsonic. Felt rather than heard. It creates unease, paranoia, the sensation of being watched by unseen predators. I fed it through speakers hidden in the walls, gradually increasing amplitude until everyone in the room shifted uncomfortably. One client looked over his shoulder, another checked his phone. Rachel adjusted her mask nervously. "Is anyone else feeling—" a client began, but didn't finish the thought. I added 28 hertz, the frequency that causes maximum discomfort in human inner ears, nausea, dizziness, the feeling that gravity has shifted unexpectedly. Within minutes, half the clients were leaning against walls for support. The masked women huddled together, no longer performing confidence. "What the hell is happening?" Leo demanded, removing his horned mask to reveal confusion and growing anger. Nina tried to take control. "Everyone remain calm." There might be an issue with the building's ventilation system. I increased amplitude on both frequencies while adding a third, 40 hertz, designed to interfere with electronic equipment. The client's phones started displaying error messages. The carefully positioned cameras flickered and died. "We need to leave," one client announced, heading for the exit. "Nobody leaves until we understand what's happening," Nina commanded, but her authority was cracking along with everyone's composure. Through night vision cameras, I watched chaos unfold. Some clients vomited from the subsonic assault. Others stumbled toward exits that I'd electronically locked. The masked women stripped off their leather, trying to escape identities that had become trap. Time for the visual component. Strobe lights erupted throughout the building, synchronized with audio frequencies to create maximum disorientation. 12 flashes per second, the rate that triggers seizures in sensitive individuals. Combined with the sonic assault, it transformed the space into sensory hell. Screaming replaced conversation. Professional predators became confused victims, stumbling through darkness while their nervous systems revolted against frequencies their brains couldn't process. I watched Rachel collapse, hands pressed to her ears, mouth open in silent agony. For a moment, I felt something that might have been sympathy. Then I remembered Leo ducking her on our bed and turned up the amplitude. The building's emergency lighting failed as my sonic weapons overloaded electrical systems. In the strobing darkness, figures stumbled like drunk ghosts, seeking exits that wouldn't open, relief that wouldn't come. Nina tried to restore order by shouting instructions nobody could hear over the acoustic chaos. Leo swung his fists at invisible attackers, the horned mask making him look like a demon having an exorcism. Through the tunnel system, I moved to the building's main entrance and unlocked the doors. Fresh mountain air flooded the space as clients stumbled outside, desperate to escape the frequency assault. But I wasn't finished. Spotlights erupted from the surrounding forest, illuminating the fleeing figures like prison escapees. I'd positioned them during my scouting trips, powered by car batteries and triggered by motion sensors. Every face was now visible. Every license plate was recorded. Every participant in my family's secret business was documented in high-definition video. Leo tried to organize a response, shouting orders that were lost in the acoustic maelstrom. Several clients jumped into their expensive cars and fled, abandoning whatever they'd paid for in favor of escape. Nina stood in the spotlight glare, hands shielding her eyes, looking older and smaller than I'd ever seen her. The woman who'd controlled every aspect of my emotional development was powerless against frequencies she couldn't understand or fight. Rachel ran toward her Honda, leather mask forgotten in the building's darkness. In the harsh illumination, she looked like a stranger, someone I might have passed on the street without recognition. I followed them through the tunnel system, emerging at the exit point half a mile away. My car waited in darkness, engine running, ready for whatever came next. The frequency weapons shut down automatically after 60 minutes, leaving the radio tower location silent except for wind through broken windows and the distant sound of expensive cars fleeing down mountain roads. Through security cameras, I watched Nina and Leo search the buildings for evidence of sabotage. They found the speakers, but not the control systems. They discovered the cameras, but not the servers collecting footage. By dawn, they'd given up and driven home, leaving behind a crime scene that would never be reported to police. I had 60 gigabytes of video evidence and audio recordings that could destroy 20 lives, but I wasn't ready to use them yet. Revenge is like good audio engineering. It requires patience, precision, and perfect timing. The days following the radio tower incident were masterpieces of psychological warfare. I returned to work as if nothing had happened, attended family dinners with Nina and Tess, played poker with Leo, kissed Rachel goodnight like a devoted husband. But privately, I was conducting an orchestra of paranoia. The first movement targeted Leo. I'd installed keystroke loggers on his computer, giving me access to passwords, bank accounts, and private communications. His construction company was already struggling financially. 3 late payments from major clients had left him barely meeting payroll. I made his situation worse by anonymously reporting safety violations to OSHA. Nothing serious enough to shut him down, just enough to trigger expensive inspections and fines. Equipment failures started plaguing his job sites. Hydraulic leaks, electrical shorts, mechanical problems that cost thousands to repair. Leo began drinking more, showing up at poker games with bloodshot eyes and trembling hands. He'd lost 15 pounds and developed a nervous tic that made his left eye twitch. "Business has been rough," he confided during one of our games. "Everything that can go wrong is going wrong. Maybe you're pushing too hard," I suggested. "Sometimes backing off helps reset the situation." He laughed bitterly. "Easy for you to say. You've got steady income, no employees depending on you." If only he knew about the employees depending on him, the masked women, the clients, the entire network that required his participation to function properly. The second movement focused on market manipulation. I'd researched every client from the radio tower gathering, using license plate numbers and facial recognition software to identify their real names and business interests. Most were executives at publicly traded companies. Stock prices are sensitive to rumors, especially rumors involving sexual scandals and illegal activities. I created anonymous social media accounts and began spreading carefully crafted disinformation. Nothing actionable enough to trigger lawsuits, just whispers and implications that created uncertainty. One client's company lost 12% of its value in 3 days. Another faced shareholder demands for executive investigation. The third movement was more personal. I started targeting Nina's therapy practice. She'd built her reputation on helping people overcome trauma and addiction. Her client list included prominent Fernridge residents who valued discretion above results. But discretion works both ways. It protects secrets and reveals them. I hacked her patient database and discovered decades of boundary violations, sexual relationships with vulnerable clients, prescription drug fraud, insurance billing for services never provided. Nina hadn't just organized the masked gatherings. She'd been exploiting people's psychological wounds for profit since before I was born. Anonymous letters began appearing in mailboxes throughout Fernridge's wealthy neighborhoods. Nothing explicit, just suggestions that certain therapy practices might not be as ethical as advertised. Perhaps other professionals should be consulted for second opinions. Nina's appointment book started showing cancellations. Patients who'd seen her for years suddenly found other therapists. Referrals from physicians stopped completely. Within 2 weeks, she'd lost 40% of her income. The fourth movement involved Rachel directly. I'd been monitoring her communication since the radio tower incident, watching the network struggle to reorganize. Several clients had demanded refunds. Others threatened exposure if their identities became public. The entire operation was hemorrhaging money and credibility. Rachel tried maintaining her yoga classes, but word spreads quickly in small towns. Women who'd trusted her with their spiritual development were hearing rumors about her extracurricular activities. Class attendance dropped from 20 students per session to fewer than 5. One evening, she came home crying. "Someone's spreading lies about me," she said, collapsing onto our couch. "Sarah Martinez asked if I was involved in some kind of Zex cult. Where would she get that idea?" I sat beside her, playing the role of supportive husband. People in small towns love gossip. It'll blow over. Will it? My reputation is everything in this business. If people think I'm some kind of pervert. She didn't finish the sentence, but I knew what she meant. Yoga instructors sell trust and authenticity. Once that's compromised, there's no recovery. I held her while she cried, stroking hair that smelled like the lavender shampoo she'd used for 20 years. For a moment, I almost felt guilty about orchestrating her destruction. Then I remembered Leo's voice on the recording. "Just keep smiling and he'll stay dumb." The fifth movement brought everything together in a symphony of surveillance. I'd been collecting evidence for weeks: financial records, communications, video footage, audio recordings. Every participant in the network was documented, cataloged, and connected to the larger conspiracy. But evidence without leverage is just data. I needed them to know I had power over their lives. The first message went to Nina's home computer, a single photograph from the radio tower gathering, showing her directing masked women while clients watched. No words, no demands, just proof that someone had been watching. Leo received a similar photograph at his construction office. Him wearing the horned mask, whip raised, surrounded by the wealthy men who'd paid for the privilege of degradation. Rachel found hers tucked under her car's windshield wiper, a screenshot of her encrypted messages with Leo, including their discussion of keeping me dumb. Mayor Coldwell got the most damaging package: photographs of him participating in activities that would end his political career and destroy his marriage. I'd researched his background extensively: Baptist family, conservative values, public speeches about moral leadership. The messages were identical. "I know who you are. I know what you've done. Wait for further instructions." Within 24 hours, my phone started ringing. Nina called first. "Ethan, we need to talk." "About what, Mom?" "You know about what. Come to my office tomorrow at 6. I'm busy tomorrow. Cancel your plans." "This is important." Leo called an hour later. "Brother, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind that requires family meeting. Can you come to the cabin tonight?" "Which cabin?" Long pause. "You know which cabin." Rachel didn't call. She came home early, face pale, hands shaking. "Somebody knows," she whispered. "Knows what?" "Everything. They have pictures, messages, evidence of—" She couldn't finish. I held her again, playing my role perfectly. "Evidence of what?" "Rachel, what's going on?" She pulled away, studying my face for signs of deception. For the first time in months, she was really looking at me, seeing me as a potential threat rather than an oblivious victim. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "Known what?" "Don't lie to me, Ethan. How long have you known about the gatherings?" I could have continued the charade, maintained my cover, preserved the element of surprise. But audio engineers understand that sometimes the most effective frequency is silence. I smiled. The expression must have been unsettling because Rachel stepped backward, suddenly afraid of a man she'd shared a bed with for 20 years. "Since October 15th, I said. "Since I followed you to the cabin and watched my family perform for money." Her face crumbled. "Oh God, Ethan, it's not what you think. It's exactly what I think. You, Leo, Nina, Tess, you've been running an escort service for wealthy perverts while pretending to care about my feelings. We do care about your feelings. That's why we didn't tell you. We knew you couldn't handle it. Couldn't handle watching my wife duck my best friend? You're right. I couldn't handle that." Tears started flowing down her cheeks. "It's just business, Ethan. It doesn't mean anything. Business that pays for our house, our cars, your yoga studio?" She nodded, no longer able to meet my eyes. "How long?" 3 years. Since Nina started organizing private sessions for her therapy clients. 3 years of lies. 3 years of protecting you from something that would destroy you. I laughed, and the sound made her flinch. "Protect me? You mean protect yourselves. Protect your income. Protect your little conspiracy." "What do you want?" she whispered. "I want to watch it all burn." The family meeting happened at Nina's office, neutral ground where psychological manipulation felt most natural. I arrived exactly on time, carrying a leather briefcase that contained printed copies of everything I'd collected. Nina sat behind her desk like a judge awaiting testimony. Tess occupied the patient chair, looking smaller and younger than I remembered. Leo paced near the window, his nervous energy filling the space like smoke. Rachel hadn't come. Smart woman. "Show us what you have," Nina said, without preamble. I opened the briefcase and began distributing photographs. The radio tower gathering, the cabin rituals, screenshots of financial transactions, bank records showing payments from shell companies to personal accounts. "Impressive surveillance work," Nina said, examining images of herself directing massed performances. "Very thorough." "I learned from the best," I replied. "You always said documentation was important for understanding behavioral patterns." Leo stopped pacing. "What do you want, Ethan?" "I want to understand how my family justified selling my wife's body to strangers while pretending to care about my emotional well-being." "It's not that simple," Tess said quietly. "The money?" "The money you used to buy cocaine," I interrupted, sliding another photograph across the desk. It showed her in a bathroom stall, credit card loaded with white powder, taken through a hidden camera I'd installed weeks earlier. Her face went white. "You're spying on all of us?" "Audio technicians are surveillance experts, Tess. You'd be amazed what people do when they think nobody's watching." Nina leaned forward, studying me with professional interest. "You've changed, Ethan. Your body language, speech patterns, emotional control. This isn't the man who came to me for anxiety therapy 2 years ago. Anxiety therapy that you used to gather information about my psychological weaknesses so you could manipulate me more effectively. I was helping you. You were studying me. Learning which buttons to push, which fears to exploit, which insecurities would keep me compliant while you ducked my life." The word ducked hung in the air like a challenge. I'd never used profanity in front of Nina before. It was a small rebellion that signaled larger changes. Leo tried to establish control. "Look, brother, I know this looks bad. Don't call me brother. Brothers don't betray each other for money." The money helped everyone. Your mortgage, Rachel's studio, Nina's practice expansion, we're family. We take care of each other. By turning my wife into a prostitute? By creating opportunities that benefited everyone involved. I pulled out the final document, a detailed financial analysis showing exactly how much money each participant had. Earned from the network. Nina had made $400,000 over 3 years. Leo had earned $180,000. Rachel's share was $220,000. My marriage had been subsidizing its own destruction. "These are the opportunities you created," I said. "Selling access to my wife's body while convincing me I was lucky to have such a loving family." Nina tried a different approach. What would you like us to do, Ethan? We can stop the gatherings, return to normal relationships. Normal? You think we can return to normal after this? People make mistakes. Families work through difficulties. With proper therapy, your therapy created this situation. Your manipulation enabled it. Your greed sustained it. She sat back, recognizing that psychological manipulation wouldn't work on someone who understood her techniques. So what happens now? Leo asked. I smiled again, and he took an unconscious step backward. Now you discover what happens when the victim becomes the predator. Over the next hour, I explained their new reality. The surveillance network would remain active. Their communications would be monitored. Their movements would be tracked. Their secrets would be documented and stored in secure locations they couldn't access or destroy. Any attempt to resume the gatherings would result in evidence being released to law enforcement, news media, and social networks. Client lists, financial records, video footage, everything would become public knowledge. Any attempt to leave Fernridge would trigger the same response. They were trapped in the town where they'd built their conspiracy, unable to escape consequences that would follow them anywhere. Any attempt to harm me would result in dead man switches activating automatically, releasing everything to recipients who'd been instructed to distribute it widely if I disappeared or died under suspicious circumstances. You're holding us prisoner, Nina said. I'm holding you accountable. There's a difference. This is extortion. This is justice. Leo's face had turned red with suppressed rage. You can't do this to us. We're your family. Family doesn't sell each other for profit. We never sold you. You sold my trust, my love, my loyalty. 20 years of believing you gave a damn about my happiness while you were profiting from my ignorance. Tess started crying. I'm sorry, Ethan. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did it anyway for 3 years. Every family dinner, every holiday, every time you asked about my marriage while knowing you were helping destroy it. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with genuine remorse, or maybe just fear of consequences. Well, what about Rachel? Nina asked. She's pregnant. The words hit me like a physical blow. Pregnant. After 3 years of trying, of fertility treatments, of hope followed by disappointment, now she was pregnant. How far along? 8 weeks. Who's the father? Nina's silence was answer enough. Leo shifted uncomfortably. We don't know for certain. DNA tests will tell us, I said. Along with everything else that's going to come out. Ethan, Nina tried one last manipulation. That child could be your biological son or daughter. Are you really going to destroy its future for revenge? I'm going to give it a future free from liars and predators. Whether that child is mine or Leo's, it deserves better than growing up in this family. I stood, gathering the photographs and documents. You have 24 hours to end all client relationships and dissolve the financial arrangements. After that, any continued activity will trigger the release protocols. And then what? Leo demanded. We just live under your surveillance forever? You live with consequences. Like normal people do when they make choices. This isn't over, he said, taking a step toward me. I didn't move. Leo, I have video of you torturing people for money. I have audio of you laughing about betraying your best friend. I have financial records showing you've been stealing from your own construction company to maintain this lifestyle. Do you really want to threaten me? He stopped, rage and fear warring across his features. The old Ethan was weak, I continued. He trusted people who didn't deserve trust. He forgave people who weren't sorry. He believed family meant something more than shared genetics and convenient lies. I walked to the door, then turned back. The new Ethan doesn't make those mistakes. November brought early snow to Fernridge, covering the town in white that made everything look clean and peaceful. Appearances can be deceiving. Rachel moved out on November 3rd, taking only clothes and personal items. She left no forwarding address, no explanation beyond a note saying she needed space to think. The pregnancy made her more valuable to the network. Certain clients paid premium rates for that particular fetish. I let her go. Tracking her would be simple enough when the time came. Leo's construction company filed for bankruptcy on November 8th. OSHA fines, equipment failures, and client defections had drained his resources. He'd started drinking heavily, showing up to job sites intoxicated, making mistakes that cost him the few contracts he still held. He came to the house on November 12th, drunk and desperate. You're destroying my life, he said, standing in my doorway like a broken scarecrow. You destroyed your own life. I'm just documenting the process. I need money, Ethan. The bank is foreclosing on my house. Get a job. Honest work pays honest wages. You know I can't work construction anymore. My hands shake too much. I looked at his trembling fingers, yellowed with nicotine and alcohol. Withdrawal symptoms? Duck you. That's not very brotherly language, Leo. He pushed past me into the house, heading for the kitchen where we'd played so many poker games. In the bright overhead light, he looked 10 years older than his actual age. Gray stubble covered hollow cheeks. His clothes hung loose on a frame that had once been powerful. I know you're watching me, he said. Cameras everywhere. Tracking my movements, reading my emails. Knowledge is power. You taught me that. Stop the surveillance and I'll disappear. Leave town, never contact any of you again. Where would you go? What would you do? Your credit is destroyed, your reputation is ruined, your skills are compromised by addiction. Running won't solve anything. He sat at the kitchen table, head in his hands. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I regret everything? I want you to understand what you've lost. My business, my house, my money. Your friend, 20 years of friendship, Leo. Someone who would have done anything for you, given you anything you needed, supported you through any crisis. I know. No, you don't. Because if you understood what you lost, you'd be devastated instead of angry. You'd be mourning instead of making demands. He looked up, and for a moment I saw genuine remorse in his bloodshot eyes. I am devastated. I lost my best friend, my business, everything that mattered. You lost those things when you decided to betray me. I'm just making the consequences visible. Can we fix this? Somehow. I studied his face, searching for sincerity beneath the desperation. Do you love her? Who? Rachel. Are you in love with my wife, or was she just convenient pussy? He flinched at the crude language. It's complicated. It's simple. Either you love her enough to want a real relationship, or you used her for Zex while pretending to be my friend. Both, he said quietly. I do love her, but I also used her. And I used you. Honesty. Finally. The baby? Probably mine. The timing fits. Will you be a good father? I want to be, but I don't know how to support a child without income. Figure it out. Fathers protect their children, even when it's difficult. Are you going to release the evidence? I considered the question. Revenge had been my motivation for months, but revenge without purpose is just cruelty. What did I actually want from this situation? That depends on what you do next. Meaning? Meaning you have two choices. You can continue being the man who betrays friends for money, or you can become the man who protects his child at any cost. What's the difference? The first man runs away when consequences arrive. The second man faces them and does whatever is necessary to build a better future. Leo nodded slowly. What would facing consequences look like? Full confession, every detail, every participant, every financial transaction. Cooperation with any investigation that follows. Complete transparency about the network's operations. That would destroy everyone involved. Everyone involved is already destroyed. The only question is whether you'll take responsibility or let others pay the price. He sat silent for 10 minutes, processing options that ranged from bad to catastrophic. Finally, he spoke. If I cooperate, will you help me get clean? Support me through recovery? Are you asking me to be your friend again? I'm asking you to help me become someone worthy of friendship. I studied his face, looking for manipulation beneath the apparent sincerity. Leo had always been charismatic, able to charm his way through situations that should have had serious consequences. But charisma requires energy, and addiction had drained him of everything except desperation. Addiction treatment first, I said. Residential program, minimum 90 days, complete detox, psychological evaluation, whatever the professionals recommend. I can't afford, I'll pay for it. Consider it an investment in my future nephew or niece. His eyes filled with tears. Why would you help me after everything I've done? Because 20 years of friendship means something, even when it's been violated. Because that child deserves a father who's capable of love instead of destruction. And because revenge without redemption is just another form of cruelty. Nina's therapy practice collapsed completely by Thanksgiving. The final blow came when 3 former patients filed complaints with the state licensing board, alleging boundary violations and unethical conduct spanning decades. I'd provided them with evidence, carefully edited to protect their privacy while documenting Nina's predatory behavior, recorded sessions where she'd manipulated vulnerable clients for personal gain, financial records showing she'd been billing insurance for services that constituted psychological abuse rather than treatment. She lost her license on November 20th. 40 years of building a reputation, destroyed by the very documentation techniques she'd taught me to value. She came to the house on December 1st, looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen her. My mother, who dominated every room she entered through sheer force of personality, now seemed fragile and uncertain. "You've won," she said, sitting in the living room where she'd given me countless lectures about responsibility and integrity. "Won what?" "Whatever game you've been playing. I'm financially ruined, professionally destroyed, socially isolated. My life's work is gone." "Your life's work was helping people. The career you lost was built on exploitation and manipulation. I did help people, hundreds of clients over 4 decades, while sexually abusing the vulnerable ones and using their trauma for profit." She was quiet for a long moment. "How long have you known? About the sexual abuse? Since I hacked your files in October? About the financial fraud? Since I accessed your billing records? About the psychological manipulation? Since I was old enough to recognize gaslighting." "You never said anything." Children don't question their parents' behavior. They assume adults know what they're doing and have good reasons for their choices. I was trying to teach you strength, independence, critical thinking. You were teaching me to accept abuse as love, to question my own perceptions when they conflicted with your narrative, to believe that my emotional needs were less important than maintaining family harmony. Nina studied me with professional interest, even in defeat. When did you realize what I was doing? Consciously, October 15th, when I saw you organizing sexual performances for money? Unconsciously? Probably years ago. But I buried the awareness because acknowledging it would have meant accepting that my mother was a predator. I never abused you sexually. You abused me psychologically. You used therapeutic techniques to control my behavior, manipulate my emotions, and ensure my compliance with your agenda. My agenda was protecting you. Your agenda was protecting yourself, keeping me weak and dependent so I wouldn't question your authority or interfere with your activities. She leaned back in the chair, suddenly looking exhausted. What happens now? Now you face consequences like everyone else. Prison? Probably. The financial fraud alone carries a mandatory minimum sentence. The sexual abuse charges will add years. Will you testify against me, if necessary? But I think other victims will provide enough testimony to ensure conviction. Other victims, she repeated. Is that how you see yourself? I see myself as someone who survived your manipulation and chose to fight back instead of enabling further abuse. You've become cold, Ethan, calculating. This isn't the man I raised. The man you raised would have accepted betrayal and abuse as normal family dysfunction. He would have blamed himself for causing problems and worked harder to earn love that was never genuine. My love for you was genuine. Your love was conditional on my compliance. When I stopped complying, you tried to destroy me rather than examining your own behavior. She started crying, real tears that carried decades of suppressed guilt and regret. I'm sorry for all of it. The manipulation, the lies, the damage I've caused. Apologies don't undo trauma, Nina. They're just words, unless they're accompanied by changed behavior. I can't change behavior from prison. You can change it by accepting responsibility and cooperating with authorities. Help them understand how the network operated, who was involved, how victims were recruited and controlled. That would implicate everyone. Everyone is already implicated. The evidence exists regardless of your cooperation. The only question is whether you'll help protect future victims or continue protecting predators. She wiped her eyes, composing herself with the dignity that had once made her seem invincible. You've thought this through very carefully. Audio technicians are detail-oriented. When will you release the evidence? It's already been released. FBI agents should arrive within the hour. Her face went pale. You called the FBI? I provided them with comprehensive documentation of interstate sex trafficking, financial fraud, and organized criminal activity. They've been building cases for weeks, without warning any of us. Warnings give criminals time to destroy evidence and flee jurisdiction. I learned that from watching crime shows, another hobby you never took seriously. Sirens became audible in the distance, growing louder as vehicles approached the house. Nina sat perfectly still, listening to the sound of her world ending. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "I hate what you did. I hate the damage you caused. I hate the years I spent believing your lies and enabling your crimes. But do you hate me?" I considered the question while federal agents parked in my driveway. This woman who'd shaped my personality, controlled my development, and manipulated my emotions for 36 years? Did I hate her? "I pity you," I said finally. "You had everything: intelligence, education, talent, opportunity, and you used it all to hurt people. That's not evil. It's waste." The doorbell rang. Nina stood, smoothing her dress and checking her appearance in the hallway mirror one last time. "Will you visit me in prison? No. Will you write? No. Will you ever forgive me?" I opened the door before answering. Federal agents stood on my porch, badges ready, faces professionally neutral. "Forgiveness requires repentance," I told Nina as the agents entered my house. "When you're ready to confront what you've done instead of justifying it, we can discuss forgiveness." Agent Sarah Chen introduced herself and her partner, Agent Michael Torres. They were polite but efficient, treating my home like a crime scene requiring careful documentation. "Dr. Nina Darrow?" Agent Chen asked. "Yes. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit sex trafficking, mail fraud, wire fraud, and violation of civil rights under color of law." The handcuffs clicked with finality that echoed through our living room. Nina maintained her dignity even in custody, walking to the federal vehicle with her head high and shoulders straight. I watched from my window as they drove away, carrying the woman who'd controlled my life for more than 3 decades. The house felt different without her presence. Larger, quieter, somehow more my own. Agent Torres returned an hour later to collect additional evidence and discuss my cooperation with ongoing investigations. "How long have you been gathering this material?" he asked, reviewing the organized files I'd prepared. "Since October 15th, 4 months of comprehensive surveillance." "This is extremely thorough work." "Professional quality. I'm an audio technician. Documentation is part of my job." "Have you considered law enforcement as a career change?" I laughed, surprising myself with the sound. "I think I've had enough of investigating criminal behavior for one lifetime. The Bureau could use people with your skills and attention to detail. I appreciate the offer, but I'm planning to start over somewhere new. Fresh beginning, clean slate." "Where will you go?" "Haven't decided yet. Somewhere without memories, where nobody knows my history." Agent Torres nodded, understanding the need to escape trauma geography. "The trials will require your testimony. Could take a year or more to work through the system. I'll be available whenever you need me." "What about your wife?" "We'll need her testimony as well. Rachel's cooperating from a location I'm not supposed to know about." "She's been working with Agent Chen since November." He looked surprised. "You knew she was cooperating?" "I've been monitoring all communications since this started. Nothing happens in this case without my knowledge." "That's concerning from a legal perspective. The surveillance was conducted on my own property using equipment I owned and installed. Any evidence gathered outside my property was turned over to federal authorities without being viewed or copied." "You're very careful about legal boundaries." I had good motivation to avoid giving anyone grounds for dismissing evidence on technicalities. He finished collecting files and recording equipment, then shook my hand at the door. "For what it's worth," he said, "you did the right thing. This network was responsible for significant harm to vulnerable people. I did the only thing I could live with." There's a difference. Rachel gave birth on June 15th, 8 months after the radio tower incident. I wasn't present for the delivery, but I received updates through Agent Chen, who'd become something like a friend during the long investigation process. The baby was healthy. 7 pounds, 2 ounces, brown hair, blue eyes that would probably change color within weeks. DNA testing confirmed Leo as the biological father, eliminating my last connection to my former family. Leo had completed residential addiction treatment and was working construction in Oregon, trying to build a stable life for his son. He sent child support payments religiously and spoke to Rachel every evening via video call. Recovery had changed him, made him quieter, more thoughtful, less dependent on charisma to navigate difficult situations. Rachel testified against Nina and the other network participants, providing detailed accounts of recruitment, financial arrangements, and psychological manipulation. Her cooperation earned a reduced sentence, 5 years probation and mandatory therapy. She'd moved to Seattle working as a certified nursing assistant while completing addiction counseling education. The plan was to help other women escape situations similar to her own. Nina received 25 years in federal prison. Age 73 at sentencing, she'd likely die in custody. Her final words to the court were an apology to victims and an acknowledgement that her actions had caused immeasurable harm. Tess plea bargained to conspiracy charges in exchange for testifying against higher-level network organizers. 3 years in minimum security prison, followed by supervised release. She had entered a drug treatment program and was working toward a college degree in social work. Mayor Coldwell lost re-election and faced federal charges for official corruption. The revelation that he'd used city resources to facilitate criminal activity destroyed his political career and resulted in a 10-year sentence. 7 network clients were convicted of various charges related to sex trafficking and exploitation. Their sentences ranged from 18 months to 12 years, depending on their level of involvement and cooperation with authorities. The trials concluded in March, nearly 2 years after I'd discovered my family's secret business. I testified in each case, providing technical explanations of surveillance evidence and detailed timelines of criminal activity. Defense attorneys tried to portray me as a vindictive husband conducting illegal surveillance, but my cooperation with federal authorities and careful adherence to legal boundaries made their attacks ineffective. I'd become something of a local celebrity, the quiet audio technician who'd brought down a criminal network through patient investigation and technical expertise. Several production companies approached me about book and movie deals, but I declined all offers. Some stories don't need wider audiences. By April, Fernridge had become unbearable. Every familiar location carried memories of betrayal and discovery. The house where Rachel and Leo had conducted their affair, the cabin where I'd first seen the masked gatherings, the radio tower where I'd unleashed sonic warfare against my own family. I sold everything: house, car, equipment, furniture, and bought a small RV suitable for extended travel. The plan was to drive until I found somewhere that felt like home, then start building a life based on honesty instead of deception. My final stop was Leo's apartment in Portland. He'd requested a meeting to discuss the baby and our shared history. He looked healthy for the first time in years. Clean-shaven, clear-eyed, wearing work clothes that weren't stained with alcohol or regret. Sobriety had restored something essential that addiction had stolen. "Thank you," he said without preamble. For what? For forcing me to face consequences instead of enabling my destruction. For paying for treatment when you had every right to let me die. For helping me become someone worthy of raising my son. You did the work, Leo. I just provided motivation. Harsh motivation. Effective motivation. You're sober, employed, and taking responsibility for your child. None of that would have happened if I'd handled this differently. He nodded, accepting the assessment without defensiveness. Recovery had taught him to acknowledge uncomfortable truths. "Do you forgive me?" he asked. "I understand why you made the choices you made. Addiction, financial pressure, Nina's manipulation. There were factors that influenced your behavior. That's not the same as forgiveness. No, it's not. Forgiveness requires trust, and trust takes time to rebuild. Will we ever be friends again?" I considered the question honestly. We'll never be the friends we were because those friendships were based on lies and hidden information. But we might become different kinds of friends, people who've shared trauma and chosen healing over revenge. I'd like that. Then prove you're worthy of it. Be a good father. Stay sober. Treat people with honesty and respect. Show me through actions that the man you've become is different from the man who betrayed me. How long will that take? However long it takes. There's no timeline for earning back trust. We talked for 2 hours about recovery, responsibility, and the future. Leo showed me pictures of his son, a beautiful baby who deserved better than the legacy of lies and exploitation that had shaped our generation. "What will you tell him about his family history?" I asked. "The truth. Age appropriately when he's old enough to understand. I want him to know that people can change, that mistakes don't define you forever, that taking responsibility for harm is the first step toward making amends." Good answer. Rachel wants to know if you'll ever meet him. Maybe, when he's older. When I'm ready to be around family again without feeling angry or betrayed. Will you stay in touch? For now. Recovery is a process, and I want to support your success. But I'm also building a new life that doesn't revolve around fixing other people's problems. We shook hands at the door, not the embrace of former best friends, but the respectful gesture of two men who'd survived mutual destruction and chosen different paths forward. I drove south from Portland, following highway signs toward destinations I'd never visited. The RV felt like freedom after months of being trapped in Fernridge's geography of trauma. Somewhere near the California border, I stopped at a truck stop and called Agent Chen to provide my new contact information. "How are you adjusting?" she asked. "Better every day. It's amazing how much energy you recover when you stop trying to fix broken people. Any regrets about how you handled the situation?" "I regret that it was necessary. I regret that people I loved chose to betray that love for money. But I don't regret exposing the truth or protecting future victims. You saved lives, Ethan. The network was expanding, recruiting younger women, planning to establish operations in other cities. Your evidence prevented significant additional harm. I know, that helps with the guilt. Guilt? Survivor's guilt. Guilt about destroying my family. Guilt about enjoying their destruction more than I should have. Those feelings are normal after trauma. Have you considered therapy?" I laughed. My mother was a therapist. She used therapy techniques to manipulate and control me for 36 years. I think I'll handle my emotional processing differently. Fair enough. Stay safe out there. I will. Thank you for everything, Agent Chen. You made a difficult situation bearable. I hung up and walked into the truck stop diner, ordering coffee and pie from a waitress who didn't know my history or care about my trauma. Just a traveler passing through, carrying stories she'd never hear. The freedom was intoxicating. 5 years later, I'm sitting in a coffee shop in Asheville, North Carolina, writing equipment manuals for a small tech company that builds hearing aids for veterans. The work is satisfying, using audio expertise to help people instead of conducting surveillance or waging sonic warfare. My phone buzzes with a text from Leo. "Marcus took his first steps today. Thought you'd want to know." Marcus. Named after Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor who wrote about duty, responsibility, and redemption. Leo had studied Stoicism during recovery, finding wisdom in ancient texts about accepting what you can't control while taking responsibility for what you can. I text back, "Congratulations. Send pictures when you get a chance. The relationship we've built over 5 years isn't friendship in any traditional sense. It's something more complex, a connection between two men who've seen each other at their worst and chosen to support each other's growth towards something better." Rachel completed her addiction counseling certification and now runs a program for women escaping exploitation. She sends holiday cards with pictures of Marcus and updates about her work. The cards are signed "With gratitude, Rachel." Not love, not friendship, but acknowledgement that my actions had ultimately saved her life. Nina died in prison 3 years ago, complications from diabetes that she'd hidden during the trial. I felt sadness when Agent Chen called with the news, but not grief. Sadness for wasted potential, for the good she might have done if she'd chosen different paths. Tess completed her social work degree and works with juvenile offenders in Denver. Her Christmas card last year included a photo of her with clients. Teenagers who reminded me of myself at their age, struggling to understand why adults had failed to protect them. "Every day I try to be the adult I needed when I was their age," she wrote. "Thank you for showing me what accountability looks like. I've rebuilt my life around honesty, simplicity, and meaningful work. No surveillance equipment except what's required for my job. No recording devices or hidden cameras. No secrets or hidden agendas." The RV became a permanent home in the mountains outside Asheville, on 5 acres of land that provides privacy without isolation. I've learned to appreciate silence, not the silence of suppressed truth, but the silence of peace. Sometimes former colleagues from Fernridge contact me through social media, curious about my new life or seeking updates about the network trials. I respond politely, but briefly, providing no information that might compromise my privacy or safety. The story became a cautionary tale in law enforcement circles, how family manipulation and financial pressure can enable criminal enterprises, how patient investigation can expose complex conspiracies, how technology can be used for both exploitation and justice. But I don't think about it as a story. I think about it as a lesson in the importance of trusting your instincts, documenting suspicious behavior, and refusing to enable people who harm others for profit. My phone buzzes again. This time, it's a photo from Leo, Marcus standing unsteadily between a couch and coffee table, grinning with the pure joy that only children possess. He looks like his father, but his expression reminds me of Tess at that age. Open, curious, trusting that the world will be kind to him. Maybe it will be. Maybe this generation can break the cycle of manipulation and exploitation that defined ours. Maybe Marcus will grow up understanding that love doesn't require compliance, that family doesn't justify abuse, that trust must be earned through consistent, honest behavior. I save the photo and return to my work, designing acoustic systems that will help wounded veterans hear their grandchildren's laughter, their spouses' voices, the everyday sounds that give life meaning. It's good work, honest work. Work that helps people instead of harming them. Outside the coffee shop window, afternoon sun filters through mountain trees, creating patterns of light and shadow that shift with the wind. Beautiful and temporary, like most things worth appreciating. I close my laptop and walk outside, breathing clean air that doesn't carry the weight of secrets or the echo of deception. The mountain silence is complete, not empty, but full of possibility. Somewhere in Oregon, a little boy is learning to walk. Somewhere in Seattle, a woman is helping others escape exploitation. Somewhere in Denver, a former addict is teaching teenagers about second chances. Somewhere in federal prison, the network's remaining members are serving sentences that will keep them away from vulnerable people for years to come. The frequencies have been cleared, the interference has been eliminated, the signal is finally clean. I drive home to my mountain cabin where honest work waits, and the only sounds are wind through trees and the distant call of eagles riding thermal currents toward peaks that touch the sky. For the first time in 36 years, I'm exactly where I belong.